Let's see here. All right, let's call the meeting to order. So we can have a roll call, please.
Jenkins,
Here.
Triplett,
Here.
Bowersox,
Here.
Dietz,
Here.
Olfest,
Here.
Vogel,
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Hey, I presume you've all had an opportunity to look over the agenda. May I have a motion to approve, please?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Item number 4. I presume everybody's looked over the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, can we have a motion to approve?
I would motion we approve as written.
Second.
Good, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Okay, minutes have been approved. Jenny, have we had is there anyone on that wants to comment about things that are not on the agenda?
No, sir, nobody reached out to me, just the 10 comments received for item 10 regarding
Right.
the amendment that I forwarded on to all the commission members.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, then item number 6. Consider recommendation to council to approve Polk City storage site plan. Is there anyone to present for that item?
Jenny, is Mark Young or Brian Campbell on the line?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I guess I'll run through this for them then. What you have before you is a site plan for a new building on the Polk County Heating and Cooling / Polk City Storage property. If you recall, back in 2016, they council approved phase 1 of the storage facility, which called for outdoor storage for RVs, campers, and boats. The developer now is proposing to move forward with phase 2, which is an indoor storage facility. It's a 1-story metal building on the southwest corner of their property. There's some existing asphalt driveways out there that are going to be paved with concrete to provide a shared access to all of the uses on the property, including both Polk County Heating and Cooling and the storage facility. There's going to be some landscaping added. They have installed the land required buffer screening along North 3rd, but they'll be adding some additional landscaping around the building and then the buffer on site. The storage facility has 9 overhead doors on the north side of the building, and they'll each one have a light over the top of them for security purposes, but there won't be any lights on the west, east, west, or south sides of the building. They've provided the stormwater management plan to the Corps of Engineers, who had no issues with it. All of staff's review comments were addressed on the last submittal.
Now, the building is going to, the entrance side of the building will face north, or?
North, correct. Yep.
Okay. And now it'll be in the very southwest corner.
Well, yeah, southwest side of their building. It'll be a little bit south of their main entrance. There'll be some concrete parking area between their main drive and the building itself.
Okay.
The back of the building kind of abuts up to a overland flowage easement. There's an existing ditch down through there, so it's not going to obviously be in that ditch. It'll be just north to the north of
Kind
that.
of along the south property line there.
Yeah, just north of the ditch. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any comments or concerns?
I didn't have any comments. I just think it's a well-done plan, and it'll be nice to have that paved down in there. It's all gravel now. So I thought it looked very good.
Anything else? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend the council approval of Polk City Storage Phase 2, subject to engineer and staff's review comments and recommendations dated October 15th, 2020.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Have a roll call, please.
Stiers,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Triplett,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Olfest,
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That will be forwarded on to council. Okay, item number 7. Consider recommendation to council to approve Lakewood's Townhome Site Plan. Is there someone to speak to that item?
Yes, sir. This is Caleb Smith with McClure Engineering Company. Before you tonight is the site plan for Lakewood Townhomes. Some of you may recall when the PUD, this property has kind of 2 zonings, which is the reason a portion of this is in a site plan. The area that's in front of you tonight is actually zoned PUD, and then the lots on the east side of Roosevelt are zoned R1A. So those lots are not included with the site plan, but the plan in front of you is very consistent to what was previously presented as part of the PUD master plan. A couple of the revisions that you may have seen on here, the footprints have been adjusted ever so slightly, just to kind of reference the final form of what the folks at Drake Homes want to move forward with. We've also revised a little bit of the interior parking along Lincoln Way. You may notice that there's some additional parking stalls on the west side now of Lincoln Way that was not there as part of the preliminary PUD concept plan. We did that just to meet the parking requirements and just provide one extra stall there above and beyond of what's required by code, just to make sure there's enough on-site parking here within this development. Other than that, the layout is very consistent to what we had presented before. Just obviously has a lot more detail as to grades and landscaping and things like that. I think at this point in time, we have 2 outstanding comments with staff. One is in regards to those parking stalls, and we're going to propose to put an easement over top of those of lots 44 and 45, just to make sure there's no issue there down the road with maintenance. And then we will also added a note on there about not having a monument sign, which is not planned at this time. If we do want to do a monument sign sometime down the road, it would require a site plan amendment, and thus we'd have to come in front of you folks to discuss that if we wanted to change that. But other than that, I think we're in agreement on everything else. Todd and Christy Drake are here as well if you've got questions specific to the product type or schedule or things like that. But other than that, I think we're here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, Kathleen, comments?
I don't specifically have anything. There is a gazebo located kind of in the center part of the project, and that is the construction of that is tied to a building permit along with the common sidewalks, just to make sure that as the building permits are moving forward, that those common improvements are moving forward as well. The drive, if I recall correctly, the sidewalks along Edgewater Drive will be paved as more of a site plan or a plat improvement, or very early in the process. So as those sidewalks will go in. This construction of Edgewater Drive is part of the public improvements drawings, which will be going to council. As you recall, construction drawings don't go to P&Z, but the construction drawings for both Roosevelt Drive and Edgewater Drive, like I said, will be going to council. We anticipate next Monday night. The construction of that Edgewater Drive will trigger the need for the church to complete their driveway connection to Edgewater, as well as sidewalks on the south side of Edgewater Drive.
Okay, thank you. Any?
I have a quick question for Kathleen. Does this also trigger the properties to the west for Edgewater all the way to Parker?
Yes, yep, they are actually working on that. We anticipate those those construction drawings may be going to council on Monday as well, or at least, or the very near future anyway. So
Edgewater then will go all through, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously with the time of year, it'll probably be next year before that happens, but at least we'll have everything lined up and ready to go for the contractor. I believe the Drakes are wanting to start some grading in underground this year, but I have not heard any specific schedule from Bruce Lefko, who's constructing the piece to the west.
Okay.
So question, Kathleen, is the streets private? Is the water and sanitary public?
Correct. Yeah, there's an easement across those. I mean, Edgewater and Roosevelt are public, but Lincoln Way itself is a private street. So the storm sewers along Lincoln Way are also private. The storm sewers that are along Edgewater are public.
So if we need to dig down in the sanitary, who's responsible for putting everything back as is? City costs or?
That's based on the easement document requirements.
Okay.
I'd have to look at that. I haven't actually read or seen the final documents, I don't believe, on those. So.
Okay. So we got stormwater right parallel with it too. So, you know, we may affect that if we have to dig down. Be good to have that spelled out and protect us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the city attorney always reviews all of those legal documents to make sure that those kind of items are covered, but I will make sure that I'll, pass that along.
Are the sidewalks on one side of the street only?
Yes, on Lincoln Way. They'll be on both sides of the streets on the public street. So Edgewater and Roosevelt will have sidewalks on both sides of the street. But as is typical in townhome projects, there's only sidewalks on one side of private streets.
And so it only goes up a third of the way on the cul-de-sac, not quite half? Is that what I'm seeing on the site plan?
I apologize, I can't really look at it real clearly right now. I believe it goes basically halfway around the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, this is Caleb Smith. It goes up to and through lot 34 on the townhome, so basically up towards the end of the cul-de-sac, so that at least half that street has sidewalk all the way through.
Kathleen, this is Doug. Quick question. As you remember, the church connected over to Bruce Lefko's utilities. Will this street going in affect that in any way? Do you know?
Those, I believe, are shown all in detailed on the construction drawings as best we knew, so that the developers are aware of those, aware of that fact.
They can just stay as is, hopefully.
That's our intent, yes.
Perfect. Okay. The only other comment I had, Kathleen, and I don't know if it matters, your cover letter had 10 single family. I counted 11. And I don't know if that's a big deal, but I mean, it's fine with me. It's just one more there.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah.
That's not a problem. I just didn't know if it needed to be corrected for the record.
Any further discussion? If not,
I'm thrilled to see this project move forward and it triggering the street constructions. I think it's going to help our transportation plan for the community.
it's been a while coming, so it's good. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to council approval of Lakewood's development site plan subject to engineer and staff comments and recommendations dated October 14th, 2020.
I second.
You. Roll call, please.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Olfest,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Stires,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Triplett.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion will pass, and this one to the council. So next, consider number 8. Consider recommendation to council to approve comp plan amendment and NAP's petition to rezone 17.41 acres from M1 to R1 and 0.25 acres from R2 to R1, located east of 220 East Vista Lake Avenue in the area known as Big Creek Technology Campus, BCTC. Is there someone to speak to this?
I guess if there's no one else to speak to it, I can do that. Yeah, NAP Properties submitted a petition to rezone the area north of the school site from M1 to R1, and then there was a little sliver of property that was zoned R2 just east site that will also be zoned R1. So essentially, these are kind of some cleanup rezonings related to the school's rezoning. With respect to the comprehensive plan amendment, when the school's property was rezoned to R1, the comprehensive plan was amended to show civic on the school site and single-family residential to the north. So that part was already taken care of. So this kind of looks at the eastern part of Knapp's property, which gets essentially adjusts the location for the park ground and gets rid of any of the remaining industrial in there. So.
Okay. Any discussion from the commission?
I don't have any concern with the cleanup of these issues and the rezoning, other than to state again, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to have on an agenda in some meeting in the future, some time slated to update the comprehensive plan for areas around this area to perhaps include some additional industrial to make up for the industrial that we are losing with these rezoning.
Any other further discussion? Let's see. If not, we have, okay, so that's a separate item. 8 and 9 are two separate items. Okay. So if there's no further discussion on this, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to council the rezoning of Knapp's petition for 17.41 acres from M1 to R1 and 0.25 acres from R2 to R1, located east of 2020 East Vista Lake Avenue in the area known as Big Creek Technology Campus, and any related changes to the comprehensive plan to accommodate these rezoning changes, all subject to engineers and staff's comments and recommendations dated October 8, 2020.
Second.
Second, okay. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Vogel,
Yes.
Sires,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Triplett,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Olfest.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That is approved. Item number 9, consider recommendation to council to approve North Polk intermediate site plan. I would presume if there was no one for the previous item, there's no one for this item. Is there?
No, Aaron and Ken are both on the call.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. This is Erin Olendike.
Hello, everybody.
This is Erin Olendike. I'm with Civil Design Advantage. My address, 3405 Southeast Crossroads Drive, Suite G in Grimes. I'm here tonight on behalf of the North Polk Community School District, and also present is Ken Hagan with OPN Architects. I'm here to discuss architecture. We are here tonight to request approval for the North Polk Intermediate School site plan. We're very excited to bring this forward. This project is located in the Big Creek Technology Park. It sits on approximately 26 acres at 340 East Vista Lake Avenue. There are 2 entrances being proposed for this site off of East Vista Lake Avenue. There's an upper parking area, which will be for student drop-off and parent parking. And then there's the eastern entrance that'll go to the lower level, which is where buses will drop off students and employees can park. The building itself is just over 71,000 square foot. There's a playground open space area to the west of the site. The building does sit on 26 acres total. We're only disturbing approximately 50 acres for this building. There are 3 different detention areas throughout the site to handle stormwater. I guess with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the site plan itself. And then Ken can maybe get into the architecture a little bit.
Any questions from any members? If not, go ahead with the architecture, I guess.
Thank you. Ken Hagan with OPN Architects. Good evening, everybody. I know that there was some consideration for, there are a few review comments about the precast, and I wanted to make sure everybody understood that this is an architectural precast. It's not like what you would find on a warehouse or anything like that. We're going to try to use some form liner, some form work, some different textures within that precast to give it a little bit of a different feel, kind of play with some shadow and some texture in order to provide some relief in the facade. So we're not quite, we're not going to be a big flat area. Along with that, we'll provide some accent materials around the entries, as well as some around the windows that you probably have seen in the elevations that were provided to you, to bring a little nuance to the building, a little texture to the building, soften up that concrete just a little bit. But I know that some cut sheets were requested. Typically precast isn't a real good material to have a cut sheet on. We have requested some samples from some different precasters, and we're awaiting those coming. As soon as we can get them, we'll get those updated. If anybody wants to see those, I'm more than happy to show those to you. But we are looking at a 4-3-5 kind of construction, which is a 4-inch exterior precast, which provides us the ability to have some of that relief up to 1 inch on the exterior of the building. So that's kind of where we sit on that. There were some other review comments. I don't know if you guys want me to run through those real quick, because I do have some answers on some of those guys. Review comment regarding the Declaration of Development Criteria and Design Standards. This was one that is put in place by Nat Properties for review of the building itself. We're in contact with them. We're kind of going through that process right now. That's kind of where we sit. They don't seem to have too much consternation on that. I think that we'll get through that relatively easily and work with them if there is any question or comment or concern. But as of now, they don't seem to have any. There will be some mechanical units. We're working on the placement of those right now. As you know, this building is in pretty early stages of design. We've just passed through schematic design, which if you look at the overall schedule of this, that's kind of the first third of the design process. We are looking at occupying this building in fall of 2022, which is why we're in front of you right now, to get some of the grading and the other packages out, so that way we can kind of get ahead of it and make sure that we hit our schedules for the construction of this building. As far as the light fixtures, there was a question on number 4 concerning the light fixtures. The SB light fixture that's shown on the photometric plan that you guys have had a chance to look at, I hope, is one that has a cutoff and is a downlight fixture only. At about 10 feet away from the building, it reduces by about 50% of its total lumen capacity. So by the time we get to any property lines, it'll be negligible as far as the light output, with no light bleed or light pollution. I know that there was a question about equivalency. Typically, we see like a 4-to-1 equivalency on that for wattage from an incandescent to an LED. So going the other way, it's about a 36 watt for an LED. So if you multiply that by 4, it's about 144 watts. So we're under that 150 watt for the code. And then as far as the signage, again, I think we're pretty early on in the design package. The signage has not been really finalized yet, but there are other school buildings within the city. We would anticipate that a similar monument sign would be proposed for something like that. I know that there is concern about a video board or a video component to that. So we'll work with the city to make sure that that gets put in a proper location and proper brightness. So we don't want to go outside of that at all. So we'll make sure that we work with everybody to make sure that that gets put into place correctly and come back with any proper requirements for review and approval on those.
Ken, I have a question. This is Doug Siners. Looking
Hi,
at your
Doug.
elevations, concrete natural color is gray. And I see, 2 or 3 different colors on your elevations of earth tones type. Is that what you're proposing?
So the different colors that you see, apologies if that is misleading. If you zoom way in, you can see kind of some different striations on there and some different tones as far as the hatching or the overlay goes. The intention is that would be all the same color. We're looking at possibly some brown tones in there. We don't want it to be a gray if we can avoid it, which is why we're asking for some of those different colors and hues from the precasters to make sure we dial that in. We don't want to be misleading at all. But what you're seeing is some different form liner, some acid etching, which is a very smooth, and then they have a sandblast, which kind of starts to expose some of that other aggregates, which will give it a slightly different color. But we want to get those aggregates correct so that way we make sure to dial that in as far as the tone goes. But the anticipation or the intent would be that we go to more of an earth tone, Doug.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions about your design, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So this is 2-story. Is there an elevator or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there has to be for ADA accessibility. That's a federal code that we have to follow. Yes, absolutely.
I just didn't see it on here, and I was just curious as to where it was. And then also, can you tell me about your ventilation and if your windows? I'm concerned obviously about airflow, and in light of the recent pandemic, how are we changing?
You bet. You bet. So, as you probably are all well aware, that has been a very large topic within the architectural community and the mechanical community. Our engineers are very well on top of this. Typically, we don't like to open windows because that really messes with the efficiency of the mechanical systems. In recent light of our current pandemic, we are researching that a little bit more to see what we can do about that. But there are other systems that deal with UV lighting within the return ducts that help to kill some of those pathogens, those airborne pathogens. So we're looking at that possibility as well. These are all things that are on the table right now and working through those as we go through the schematic design and the development of that mechanical system that's in the building. So we are working on it, but we haven't come to any kind of final decision yet. I hope that answers your question. I hate to waffle on that, but we're just so early on. I don't want to commit to anything either, but we are, that is something that we're very much concerned about in the architectural community and working through that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other, Kathleen, do you have any comments?
I don't think I have anything further.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing further from anyone, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to council approval of the North Polk Intermediate School site plan review, subject to engineer and staff comments and recommendations dated October 16, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Myers,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
Triplett,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Olfest,
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So
Thanks,
that moves
everybody.
on. to
Have a good
council
evening.
as well.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We are to item number 10. Consider recommendation of council to approve PUD amendment to Wolf Creek Townhomes. Is there someone here to speak to that application?
Yeah, this is Matt Eller. Let me turn on my video. So sorry about that. There you go. I'm looking at the development there at Wolf Creek. So we're proposing 44 units, 6, 8, and 4-plexes. Similar design of that that's on the other entrance of Wolf Creek. 2-story units. I think it will go really well with what's going on in the area with single family and the school. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, are there any questions from the members?
Should we have exterior elevations with this submittal?
I thought we had some in it. Yes, you should.
Okay, did I miss them, Jenny?
No, I think it's in her. I think Kathleen said that I saw in her report that there was.
In my report, I had 16 comments, and I didn't receive a revised submittal addressing any of those 16 comments. So one of my comments was asking for building elevations. So I have not seen any.
Okay, I thought that we had sent those in, or that Bob had. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of a requirement, Kathleen?
Yeah, typically we require that before it's even placed on the agenda. In this case, however, the notices of the meeting had already been mailed. So
maybe we should go ahead. Do you think, Kathleen, we should just go ahead and table it for next month, and then we get some of these out of the way so you have them?
I know there's probably some, I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to speak to this. I mean, you can certainly ask the commission to table it until you address the comments that staff had. Like I said, I don't, Jenny, is there anybody on the call that was wanting to
There's
speak?
no one on the call that requested to speak. They all sent in their written comments.
Okay.
So we received 10, in addition to the petition that was received by the residents, there was then 10 additional comments. I'll paraphrase it, basically were against the amendment,
Right.
because they live in the area.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have any questions. I guess I have some comments. Certainly the commission has heard me opine in the past on my thoughts that the city has, too little commercial, too little industrial. And on occasion, I even opine that I think that we have too little high density residential. I think part of the planning and zoning process for really any of those uses is to be far out in front of development in placing these on the comprehensive plan so that the land around it is undeveloped. So as land does develop around it, property owners either know or should have known or had available to them information that this higher density or industrial or commercial use was available. In this particular case, when this development was initially proposed, prior to me being on the P&Z, I believe that had 6 plexes and 8 plexes really all along the street there, all along 3rd Avenue. And then in 2011 and 13, came in with some proposals by the developer that thought the market was better for bi-attached and for single units, so that was changed at that point in time. Since then, the properties have developed up to this parcel with bi-attached and single units. And so this kind of goes against my philosophy of being out front in zoning or allowing higher density residential, in that there is already single family and bi-attached up to it. And those property owners did that with the expectation of what was going to be across the street. And I think in my opinion anyway, the 8 plexes and the 6 plexes on, on the street or right across the street on, I believe that's, can't tell here, I think that's Wolf Creek Drive. I mean, that's a leap too far for me, I guess. I'm not saying that the current plan needs to be the final plan. Perhaps some, by attached or something could be inserted instead of the single units that are currently on the plan. But to me, having the 6 plexes and the 8 plexes that close to property owners who already built expecting single units to be across the street from them is, like I said, a bit too much for me. If indeed this doesn't move forward tonight, some plan up against the road, like those 4 plexes that were there, that causes me less concern because that could be buffered by single units or by attached further west. But like I said, I'm just having a hard time with this. We certainly saw some comments. I just kind of got the general tone of them, but I was not surprised by them. And, if indeed this would move forward to council as is, I think council, what I call a resident or a citizen that's a neighbor, generally the folks on the council refer to as voters. And, so I think, my philosophy on the residents and citizens concern would even be escalated at council to this kind of a degree. But like I said, that's where I am. I think the high density residential needs to be pre-planned away from current development so that development can come up to it gradually and people know what to expect. Additionally, I guess normally when we see a major change like that, we've also had the developer do some community outreach, trying to educate the folks around the development. I'm just curious if anything like that was done.
We did. Yeah, we had a meeting with the neighborhood before this.
Okay.
And they were able to voice their concerns. So we lowered it from 48 to 44. And, we talked about some different things like parks and other things like that too.
So appreciate that, you doing that.
Well, Ron, I'm in agreement with your comments. You put them very nicely. Appreciate that. And Matt, I don't want you to waste another month getting this going. But you at least have 2 people who have spoken up so far that really aren't in favor of changing this, especially when I have 85 of our Polk City residents who seem to be not totally happy with what's presented and would like to keep it where it was. So, excuse me, I agree with Ron, if that helps you.
What is the current status? We had approved a plat for that, or what is the status of that, Kathleen?
Yeah.
I thought we had already approved a site plan for that.
You've approved a PUD master plan and a preliminary plat, but that's the plan that showed 22 garden homes.
Right. All right. I thought that's where we were with it. Right.
Yeah, it was actually approved when Wolf Creek Townhomes Plat 7 came through,
Right.
and at that time is when they made the switch to the patio homes.
And I guess,
isn't that the plan that's on the first page?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's a snippet out of it, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Now, and the properties to the north between this property and Hope Drive, that area is platted with single family homes.
Preliminary plat has been approved for for Creekview Estates up there, and actually
Right.
the first, and you've approved the final plat for phase 1 of that, which is on the west side of that development. But that's all been
Right.
preliminary platted for single family homes.
Right. So to me, it just does, that is intended, or just doesn't fit with this anymore. I really hate to see this change to what's being proposed, because it just doesn't seem to fit there anymore.
I guess,
Because of what
just so you
else is around.
you know kind of where my thought process was, is that it's still so I get what you're saying anymore. I didn't want you to think that we're just trying to put high density in the middle of residential. Originally, it was proposed with 6 and 8 plexes. That's what was built on the other entrance on the other side. There were 2 stories. Those did really well. It was a nice, affordable place for young families to be, or not young families. Well, I mean, it could be either or. And so it was 31, I believe, is what the original plan was for this plat, and this is 44. So we're higher, obviously, by 12. So my question to the planning and zoning, if we moved it more towards the perimeter being a twin home, if you will, or something more from a twin or a 4-plex, we lowered the density down to more of where it was originally, would that be something that would be more palatable, or is that still something where the commission would still say, and if it's not exactly kind of what we've approved so far with the single homes or style, that's kind of where we're sitting. So it's right now.
I guess the other thing too is that, yeah, I mean, all the homes in there, to mine, doesn't have any garages, so all the cars would be out in the just parked on a parking lot, right?
No, there's garages. So I'm sorry you don't have the elevations. I'd have to get those to you.
Well, I guess, I would think and to echo what Doug said, I'd hate to have you spend a month in redesigning, Matt. My personal feeling is the density that as it is now, the 22 is probably as it should be in that area, given, as Danny said, with the housing north and now all around it, I'd hate to see it a higher density. Just be my personal feeling.
And I guess my thoughts when I look at the majority of that community and how it's developed now, there's also a lot of bi-attached product. In fact, there's bi-attached product, I believe, all the way around the pond. And so, if you're looking to, get a few extra units, I think the bi-attached, my own opinion is the bi-attached product does fit in with the neighborhood. If you're looking to make some changes, that's my own personal opinion.
All right, so if you don't mind, if we could maybe, unless somebody else has more to say, maybe if we could table this, I could maybe kind of think about it, and maybe I'll decide to bring something back to you more with maybe a twin home type product, or maybe not, based on the comments that you guys have already given.
Yeah, we didn't poll everybody, but based on the comments you've heard from those of us who have spoken, I don't think we could go along with what is being proposed.
Okay.
Any other comments or concerns? Okay, if
I
not,
don't.
then do you?
I have one thing, if I may. I'm very concerned that we have 85 people against what you want to do, or opposed, I should say. They probably wouldn't be opposed to where it is right now in the 2013 plan. But any change you make to that needs to be very sensitive to what they want, because they feel their property values could depreciate if you have something that is lesser than what is already there. So, I don't know that they're probably maybe all never going to like anything that you do other than what's here. But if there can be a sensitive compromise somewhere along the line, I think that would be appreciated by me anyway, and hopefully some of the surrounding residents. So I don't know if it would do any good to go back and talk to them again, present another plan to them, and try and get them a little bit to understand where you're coming from and what you would like to do, and that you're sensitive to their concerns. So I don't know if that'll help or not, but if I see 85 people sign a petition again for the same, for even something you've revised, you know, it's really hard for me to go against the people that live here. So, thanks, Matt.
Well, procedurally, do you wish to withdraw it and just submit another plan at some time, or
I think that would, if
do
you
you
would mind, that'd be
change?
great.
So tabling it would. So you want to table it or come back with another plan, or?
Wouldn't tabling it be keeping the same project
Yeah, that would just
there
be,
and reconsidering it next time?
yeah,
So
presumably.
we'd want to withdraw, I would think.
Just come back and do proposal. So do we do anything with this then?
I'm
Do we
thinking this through really quickly.
just not act on it?
I'm wondering if you just don't act on it. I think that would probably be better if he's
Yep.
going to amend his plan.
All right, I think then we just won't take any action on this tonight. Is that acceptable? Okay, then we just don't take any action.
Do we have to vote on that?
All right,
No action.
No action, okay.
no action. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we move on to item number 11. Consider recommendation to council to amend the Polk City subdivision ordinance.
This is
All
Kathleen.
right, Kathleen.
Yeah, I can kind of just brush over this real quickly and then go into as much detail as you like or as many questions as you have. You received in your packet draft number 5 of the proposed ordinance. In addition, you received a summary that kind of gives some bullet points, if you will, of some of the major changes that are being proposed to when you compare the new subdivision regulations to the old subdivision regulations.
Yep. You said draft number 5. I have draft number 4.
It is draft number 4. Draft number
Okay.
5 just had a couple changes, and I'd already sent them out.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of difference between draft 4 and 5. I thought 5 was what was in the packet. So sorry about that. They weren't significant. It was more cleanup items and that kind of thing in draft 5. So yeah, probably some of the most significant changes is all of the review and approval procedures are lumped in one section. The old ordinance kind of repeated a review and approval process for every individual type of development. So it was kind of redundant, and so we kind of streamlined that, put it all in one location. Probably one of the other big things about that that's different is that there's a lot more emphasis put on PDF and electronic submittals as opposed to the old ordinance that was calling for, 12 and 14 paper copies of everything. So in an effort to go as paperless as possible, we have kind of streamlined that. Also ties all of the development reviews to a development schedule, which is essentially the way we've been functioning here in recent years, where the development schedule is posted online and the developers are aware of it, and it gives all of the deadlines for submittal so that they can be on, and then they'll know what P&Z meeting that they would be on and that kind of thing. So all of those, it just ties the ordinance to the process that we've been using in recent years. The next probably other big items that changed was there was a pretty wholesale rework of the park and open space dedication requirements. At this point in time, the dedication rate, if you will, remains the same at 995.95 square feet per single family residential lot. That's what the city has been getting for a number of years, and that's based on the current amount of park ground that the city has per capita, and it keeps it the same. And actually, at this point in time, Polk City is on the high end of the range in the metro area. Yeah, you know, at some point, as a city adds more parks, like the one in Big Creek Technology Campus, we may want to revisit that number. But there were some other pretty significant changes. The first is it requires parks to have a minimum of 100 feet of frontage to a public street. The goal there is to avoid the parks that similar to like the Marina Cove Park that only has 20 feet of street frontage. So you really don't even know that that park's there unless you live in the neighborhood. It also gives the opportunity for the city to have an access, you know, an access drive for vehicles if they want back into that parking. And it again, just provides for more park visibility. The second thing is that we now have a requirement that at least 75% of the required parkland dedication be designed for active recreation, excuse me. So you have in the past got a lot of park ground that is ravines and drainage ditches. Your old ordinance did exclude detention pond, but only the water surface area of detention ponds. So you wound up getting a lot of embankments and dam type structures for detention basins. So all of that part, that is excluded. And again, 75% of them would be for active recreation, and that even the slope of the ground is defined in there. So you should get a lot more usable park ground with this. It also requires parks to be have the minimum size of 1 acre rather than 10,000 square feet. That's to go along with the idea for having fewer larger parks rather than a 10,000 square foot park that is, you know, maybe you can put a playground on it, but it's a real small park. So the goal is to try to consolidate parks and have larger parks. I guess I skipped over this, but it now requires active recreation areas to have 4 inches of clean, lightly compacted topsoil, so that in those active recreation areas, grass can be established and maintained, and you've got a better play surface than if you've got just sparse grass on top of clay. Then let's see, again, we mentioned the embankments being excluded for detention ponds. It also allows that there, in certain cases, developers may request that the parkland dedication be a cash donation rather than a land donation. Obviously, the city would consider whether that was acceptable or not. But if it was acceptable, the idea is that that fee would be based on the fair market value of the land, which is the way it currently is, but it also adds in the cost that if the city was going to purchase that land elsewhere, it includes the cost of grading and seeding a similarly sized parcel, plus it includes 1/2 of the cost of the paving and utilities for that required 100 feet of street frontage, because that's an actual real cost that goes into that park ground. Also allows private recreational facilities to only to be counted based on 50% of their cost rather than the full value. If you recall, or maybe you weren't aware, TCI Golf Course, the golf course served as the park ground, as 100% of the park ground for everything in TCI, as well as all of like Big Creek Valley and Wolf Creek Townhomes and anything that was kind of surrounding there. The golf course was considered part of their parkland dedication, whereas now it would only be based on 50% of the cost. It continues to allow recreational trail easements to count toward the park, but it essentially gives the city the option of requiring those trails to be in an outlot that's owned by the city rather than a recreational trail. Obviously, ownership gives the city more control. The other thing that it does is it adjust the setbacks. If you have an easement that's 20 foot wide, you could wind up having a house sitting right on that easement line and actually their roof overhanging into the recreational trail easement. Whereas if the city owns it as a park and it's on a side lot between two, or side yard between two lots, they would have to meet the 8 foot wide building setback lines on that side on either side. So it gives you a lot more elbow room instead of having a park, right, or a trail right in a tunnel between two homes. So that, it does allow the city to take trail easements, but it's more their option. It gives the city the option on that. There might be some instances where the city would want to take trail easements and instead of taking the ground, and that might be if it's a trail that the city is questionable whether it'll ever get constructed. Say, for example, some trails that would have to cross under 415 over on the Schnetzler piece, for example. Those would be in an easement area so that the city's not stuck with owning and maintaining a trail easement area in the backyard for a trail that perhaps never happens. So that would be a situation where a trail easement would be preferable as opposed to actually taking it as a land donation. That's kind of quickly it. In terms of the comparison to parkland. And then again, there was a number of other, required improvements where we were clarifying what the required improvements are, clarifies the developer's responsibility with respect to off-site improvements such as paving of a gravel road that might abut the development, for example. A lot of that is in line with some recent policies that the city council has adopted. So it brings those policies into the ordinance form. Also requires a geotechnical report. Before we asked for them, and we would sometimes get them, but we didn't have a code requirement where we could flat out require geotechnical reports to be done. Let's see, kind of does some adjustment of lot sizes where sanitary sewer systems are. Currently, the lots were only 10,000 square feet in size, for example, if you didn't have a sanitary sewer, and that doesn't even meet Polk County requirements for septic systems. So we've bumped up the lot sizes in those rare instances where city services are not available. With respect to grading and seeding, this is essentially a new section that's added into your subdivision ordinance. There is a whole section on grading permits that is currently there, but it's talking more about the permitting process for a contractor to get a grading permit. We're planning on putting that in its own separate chapter so that those grading permits apply to site plans as, and other construction, not just subdivision. City's kind of been getting them for site plans, but pulling it into its own separate chapter gives them a lot more teeth on the grading permit side. And respect to the new section in the code and in the subdivision ordinance, this has certain design requirements, and a particular note is that it requires a minimum of 4 inches of topsoil to be spread across the entire subdivision. The only option would be as if a geotechnical report that is now required indicated there wasn't enough topsoil available. Then during the design process and prior to construction during approval, a mitigation plan for that would be required. It also prohibits removing topsoil from the site. Prohibits burial of trees and debris, and it makes it clear, even though as a policy we've been doing this, it spells out that it is absolutely a requirement for the developer's engineer to establish minimum floor elevations at 1 foot above the base floor elevation when it's a FEMA floodplain, and minimum opening elevations when it's next to detention ponds. Again, that's a policy we've been using, but now it's codified. Probably with streets, one of the things that is it requires connectivity between neighborhoods in accordance with the comp plan. It requires a secondary access for 30 or more homes or 300 or more average daily trips. So it kind of puts a maximum on those dead end streets, so that it strongly is encouraging then secondary means of entrance and access to the site. Again, it requires a developer to be responsible for paving a 15.5-foot width, which is of the existing gravel roads abutting subdivisions, or if the paving isn't practical, in other words, you don't have anybody lined up to pay for the other side, that it allows the city to require a security for the developer's share of those paving improvements. Also stipulates and adds requirements for when a traffic impact study would be required. Actually, traffic impact studies are not mentioned in your subdivision ordinance at all at this point. So again, this is kind of a new requirement, and it spells out the types of developments that would be required to look at a traffic study. And some of the important things that come out of the traffic study is like what you saw with the school. We did ask the school to do a traffic study, and they did comply, but I didn't have necessarily a code requirement for that to do, but it does then come out with, as you probably saw in the school site, that their traffic study recommends that 4 turn lanes be installed at the intersection of East Vista Lake and North 3rd, and that indicated that the traffic, they anticipate there'd probably be a need for a traffic signal somewhere around 2040, depending on the rate of development. So again, it gives the city and the city council the information that they need to understand what large improvements are. It also gives the city the ability to require turn lanes, for example. If the development creates enough trips, it generates enough trips, and the traffic report calls for a turn lane, it gives the city the ability to require the developer to install the turn lane. Again, recently that's kind of been what's been happening. For example, Quickstar was required to install their turn lanes, but historically has not been the case in Polk City. And again, this gives the city that codification requirement, which makes it a lot easier when you're talking to developers about participating in those costs. Water mains, I don't think there's anything real significant that changed there, other than it spells out that the developer is responsible for the cost of all water mains that are 8 inches in diameter or less, and that but not that oversized unless it's to serve. If a water main needs to be bumped up to 12 inches or larger, if it's not just to serve that development, the developer would not necessarily be responsible for that upsizing. That's a very similar upsizing requirement with respect to sanitary sewers. Storm sewers and drainage, it specifically requires a stormwater management plan. Again, we have been getting those for years, but it puts the requirements in place. It also changes your current regulations, which currently single-family and two-family residential developments do not have to provide detention according to your current code. And for many, many years, you'd see that there were no detention ponds in single-family residential. We have, in the last several years, been requiring subdivisions to match existing storms. In other words, they detain to the point that the proposed 100-year flows didn't exceed the existing 100-year flows, which is not the same as full detention, which actually takes it back to 5-year undeveloped flows. So you'll probably be seeing some larger detention basins, but really, the checking I've done, I haven't been able to find another community. I did some brief checking, I should say, and I believe all the cities in the metro area are requiring detention for single-family residential. Now it requires subdrains along both sides of all streets. It would allow a waiver only if a geotechnical report clearly said that it wasn't necessary, but now the subdrains are required. Again, we've recently been getting them in most of the subdivisions, but it strengthens that requirement. New requirement is requiring special backfill, which is kind of a rock backfill beneath pavement around structures and pipes on storm sewers. That's due to the fact that was actually something that Mike Schulte wanted due to some of the cracking that he's been seeing in pavements, and we're looking to improve that by requiring special backfill so that you don't get the settlement around those structures and storm sewer pipes. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of trying to go through it fairly quickly here. let's see, franchise utilities. Your old code said that public utility easements were to be in the rear yards. But as a matter of practice, utility companies have not been using rear yard easements for years and actually do not want them and won't serve them. So we've been getting PUEs are running alongside the streets and have been for probably 20 years or more. So it just is bringing that in terms of into current practice. Sidewalks in the subdivision ordinance, we are saying that sidewalks shall be 5 foot wide rather than 4 foot wide sidewalks. If the city's going to go to that across the board, there's probably a few other places that needs to be changed in code. Another new requirement is that the developer is responsible for paving sidewalks along arterial streets as a plat improvement. That was required in Lost Lakes, where Lost Lakes, I think it was plat 4 or 3 and 4, were required to pave the sidewalk along Broadway, but it was not in your code, and we've typically gotten a lot of pushback for it, and actually have had to, there's been concessions made where they get some credit toward parkland dedication or whatever for paving of those sidewalks. So now this would be a requirement. It wouldn't have any impact on any parkland dedication or any kind of credits for parkland dedication. It's just flat out required that they have to install those sidewalks. And those are areas where you're not gonna have driveways across there anyway, because there's not gonna be individual driveways along your arterial streets. It also clearly states that the developer is responsible for paving sidewalks adjacent to non-buildable lots. So that includes outlots, for example, that might have a detention basin in it or a park. Also requires sidewalk surety for all the sidewalks to guarantee that has a performance bond so that all sidewalks within the plat need to be constructed within 4 years, or the bond can be called, so that the city doesn't wind up with gaps in sidewalks because of one lot, for example, that doesn't get built on. And so therefore, you know, a subdivision has a gap in their sidewalk system. Recreational trails, again, this is a new section. Your old code didn't even mention recreational trails. So in terms of design standards, it says if there's a regional trail reasonably available, then the developer is obligated to construct a 10-foot trail connector from the subdivision to that regional or municipal trail. You know, we've done a number of those, for example, in Bridgeview and well, I guess Woodhaven would have one in Lost Lakes, where the developer has constructed, you know, just 125 or 130 feet of trail, and then they wind up getting a parkland dedication for a credit for that. This just requires them to do it, and again, it doesn't then count as a credit toward their park. So it does, by them installing it, you're not in effect getting less park ground. So that just obligates the developer to do that. It also clarifies that the developer is responsible for grading a platform for future trails within parks and open space. So that if there's a park or a trail shown on the comprehensive plan, that they would need to grade the platform for it, even though they may not be required to pave the actual trail itself. Cluster mailboxes, now those are just pads that requires a developer to pave those pads. Again, we've been, as a policy, requiring that, but it codifies that requirement. Streetlights, I don't think there's a lot different there. Streets and traffic control signs is kind of a new section, but it essentially continues to require the developer to be responsible for the cost of street signs. But it also adds the fact that they would be responsible for the cost of any pavement markings that may be required. So that the pavement markings part is the new part. So there's a whole section that spells out what is required from each easement. The goal is that the city will have standard forms of easements and that the developers would be required to use those forms. It would certainly save a lot of time on staff's part, including myself and the city attorney, as well as staff, in making sure that the easement documents each one's different when it's drafted by a different attorney, and making sure that all of the city's requirements are in there, and kind of going back and forth. Having a standard form just makes that, you know, an almost automatic process. They'll have to attach, obviously, the legal description for the easement and put in the owner's name that's granting the easement, but that's really all that should need to be done to those. So I personally am kind of looking forward to that. Benchmarks and datum plane, and it clearly specifies what the survey elevations will be on, and the Iowa Regional Coordinate System that is compatible with the city's GIS system is what they need to be submitting their as-built drawings on. They get us digital CAD files so that it's easy to import into the GIS system. Construction of improvements. I don't know that there's anything, well, the pre-construction conference is now required. We've been having them and requiring them, but it's now spelled out that that's a requirement. Construction observation, it allows that to be provided by either the Public Works Director or at the Public Works Director's direction by the city engineer. It also requires the developer's engineer to review all material submittals and shop drawings. Again, we've been requiring that as a policy, but that's now codified. And it allows some type of performance surety if the developer wants to final plat before completion of construction. Typically, that's not the way it's done in Polk City, but on occasion, there are certain plats that the final plat's approved before construction is complete. Allows the city engineer to require a longer duration on a 4-year maintenance bond if for some reason there is any a deficiency that of any construction that's non-compliant, but not non-compliant to the point that it requires removal. Because right now there's kind of a gap. It's like if it's really non-compliant, they have to remove it, and if it's acceptable, but then this allows that gray area where it's not bad enough to be removed, but allows the city to require a longer maintenance bond. Let's see. Another new item is the neighborhood sketch plan requirements. That allows the city manager, city engineer to require a sketch plan when a project like a preliminary plat first comes in. And that's to allow, if they bring in a small plat, especially as plats, if they're smaller plats or they're only wanting to plat a piece of it, it gives you a lot more strength to look beyond the plat boundary. Developers have a tendency to look at where, as if the world ends at their plat boundary. So the neighborhood sketch plan lets the city look a lot more closely at how streets would be connected in the future and how circulation would work, how, where trunk sewers might go. I mean, it's not a detailed plan. That's why it's called a sketch plan, but it lets you know how all the different puzzle pieces will all fit together to make a picture of what a neighborhood's going to look like. So that may even go beyond what the property that the developer actually owns. So they may be doing some sketching on neighboring plans or neighboring property owners' property as well. The plat of subdivision requirements, I don't think that they were condensed and reorganized. There wasn't a lot of changes there. Same is true with the plats of survey and acquisition. They were added based on the policies that we've been using. Oh, I should mention, I guess it's not even mentioned here, we did add a section that allows for a minor plat of subdivision, which is kind of a new thing to Polk City. What it really is the only time it's used is if there's, and I apologize, I'm going to say it's like 4 lots or more or less. I apologize, I can't remember the exact number that we put in there. But it's a small plat that requires no public improvements. So let's say if there was a property along an existing street that had water and sewer, and it was a large lot, and they wanted to divide it into 3 lots instead of 1 large lot, and all 3 lots still meet code and the comprehensive plan, it allows that to be done with a minor plat of subdivision rather than a major plat of subdivision. So it kind of shortcuts the preliminary plat process, because most of the preliminary plat is looking at the improvements such as, streets, where the streets run and where utilities run. So it's a simpler process. It's kind of more like a multi-lot plat of survey, if you will. Most, number of other communities allow for those. It simplifies the process and the cost to the developer when there is no need to review preliminary plats because there is no improvements that are proposed. And the fees basically kind of just combined all of the fees that are related to platting in one section so that developers, it's easy to find and it's easy to administer. And it also makes it clear, there's a section that talks very clearly on the variations and exceptions. So it allows the council to adjust and modify the requirements of the subdivision ordinance based on certain unique characteristics of that plat. But it puts it all in one place instead of having sentences here and there and everywhere around the ordinance that talk about how to do any kind of a design variation. So puts that all in one place. That's it in a nutshell, but let me know if you have any questions.
It's a pretty big nutshell.
Sorry. I tried to go through it quick.
No, I think that was pretty good, Kathleen. I did appreciate getting that red line copy because it helped me kind of see where the changes were and so on.
Yeah, just so you know, that red line copy was just changes from previous drafts. It was not changes compared to your current ordinance. So
right. Yeah. Well,
I had one question. Kathleen, the changing to 5-foot sidewalks and a little 4-foot, what's the reason for that?
Well, part of it comes out of the comprehensive plan, and part of it is just general walkability. It's been determined, there's a number of studies out there that talk about a 4-foot sidewalk is very difficult for two people to walk side by side. And so that's where the recommendation, and as a matter of fact, I think we talked about it at the comp plan. I don't know for sure that it actually got included in the comp plan
I think
for 5-foot.
But the new standards have gone to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of the communities I've looked at have 5-foot sidewalks. I can't tell you exactly which communities. It's not an unusual requirement to go to 5-foot now. I think part of it's just, people are bigger.
Yeah, I could see walking side by side. It's just another cost factor from a developer's perspective. I hate to add more cost to people, but I wasn't sure how common that was becoming. I think most of ours in town are either 3 or 4, aren't they?
They should be 4. I'm not aware of any 3, but maybe in some older parts of town. The requirement's been 4-foot wide sidewalks at least since 2003 when I started working with the city.
Speaking of sidewalks, first and foremost, thanks to the staff for all of your work on this. And I really appreciate the changes to the park land dedication pieces specifically. But speaking of sidewalks, can you tell, is it required to now have it on both sides of the street, except for if it is a private street or?
Yes, yeah, that's actually in your code in another section, I believe. But I'll check and make sure it's spelled out. But yeah, that's a requirement. The only exception that we've talked about adding is that having only one at T intersections, having only one crosswalk on T intersections, okay, which is kind of what we've gone to recently. Partly because you can't. The new ADA requirements don't allow a driveway to be considered the receiving ramp for a sidewalk on one side. So therefore, every time you have a sidewalk on one side, you have to have a sidewalk on the other side. And at T intersections, it's just not really workable with the driveway. So that's why we've gone to, for example, and Creekview Estates is one where we've gone to having sidewalks only on one side, a sidewalk ramp, excuse me, only on one side at cul-de-sacs at T intersections. I'm sorry, not just at cul-de-sacs, any T intersection. But the public street itself has sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Is there a reason we can't, moving forward, require it even on private drives? I'm just saying, I live on a street that only has it on one side, and we have a lot of kids, and it really isn't safe. and like looking at tonight's townhomes, I mean, they have the sidewalk all on one side and not on the other side. There's no continuation.
Right.
And I'm just thinking for safety particularly reasons, is there a way we can, I realize that that's too late to do now, but moving forward?
We can certainly add that in if the commission wants to go that route. I would say at this point, I think all of the townhome type developments that you've got, whether it's the tournament club townhomes on Tournament Way, Wolf Creek, they all have, Wolf Creek would have them on both sides where it's a public street, like Wolf Creek Drive. And I think West Trace Drive is the other public street, but anyway, there's certain public streets in Wolf Creek is kind of a hodgepodge of some public, some private, but they do have public sidewalks on both sides of the public streets, but only on one on the private. So it would be different than what you've done in the past, which is fine. A lot of times they've balked at it simply just because it takes up more space. But by the fact that they don't have a right of way, those sidewalks do wind up being on the back of curb, typically, like you'd see there. But you can certainly do that on both sides of the street. So I don't have a problem with requiring it.
Oh, Ron, you're muted.
Just in kind of jumping on what Deanna had said there, or in talking about sidewalks, and in living in one of those townhome developments who happens to have it on just the one side, I find the back of curb sidewalks to be a ridiculous feature from a safety perspective. First of all, snow removal in the wintertime is impossible on back of curb sidewalks. But also, when you think of a townhome development, you have many double width and triple width driveways, and this back of curb sidewalk is right in the apron of all of those driveways. So we essentially call that sidewalk our ankle buster of the neighborhood, because to walk on it, you are always at risk of, running into safety issues.
Ron,
yes.
I'm just going to mention, I agree with you. We have, I've seen your sidewalk, and that's why on newer subdivisions that have gone through, and like the one that you're looking at tonight with Lakewoods, they are putting like a 2-inch rolled curb so that it matches with the driveway better. I won't say it's perfect, but it has a rolled curb so their driveway actually kind of bumps up. So it's a lot smoother. I mean, so we are requiring a different type of design than what you have in your neighborhood, because that is pretty bad.
Yeah, in our neighborhood, everyone walks in the street.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, thank you. Up there where there's only one side on, what is it, Oak Drive, whatever, across from the school, we actually waived that as a city council because we were assured it was going to save a lot of trees. And it didn't, and we've learned our lesson, and that's why we don't waive them anymore. I can't think of a single time we have since then. On both sides.
Yeah, not on public streets that I'm aware of. The private townhome streets they have, but not public.
Yeah.
Just in staying on sidewalks also, Kathleen, I saw in your summary it talked about them needing to be built 4 years after the plat was approved. I couldn't find that in the document itself.
Okay.
And I was looking on page, I think it was 42. It talks about the bond, but it didn't talk about a timeline.
I think there is, but boy, I'm sorry, I'm working from a computer and I can't pull it up on my computer to do a quick search, Ron. I know we specifically talked about it.
And perhaps it's in draft 5, who knows?
Yeah. I apologize, Ron.
No, I really appreciated that. I think that's a great feature to be able to fill in those gaps. And so I was just wanting to see the language of it, and then I couldn't find the language for it.
I'm looking too, but I.
Oh, it's, I'm looking at, I believe, draft 4 on the bottom of page 48. And the top of page 49 where it says sidewalk surety. So it's in the section of for performance sureties.
Yep, I see it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming once this would get approved, any site plans that would expire would need to be reapproved using these, meaning, you know, if we have a residential site plan and it expires due to time and it didn't have detention, the new site plan would need detention?
Well, number one, it doesn't apply to site plans. The subdivision ordinance applies to plats. But if a plat,
okay.
yep. But the plat, if a plat expires, then yeah, it spells that out at the jurisdiction and application part at the front. With the paragraph number 7 talks about the implementation plan there. And it basically says the subdivision regulations would be effective January 1st. We're going to, you know, depending on how long this takes, maybe that we have to adjust that a little bit, but the goal is to try to get it adopted by council so that they would go into effect on January 1st. And then it says, it talks about that anything after that, anything before that date gets to stay on the old regulations and provided it stays valid. So once that, if the preliminary plat expires, then it's no longer valid. It also spells out that January 23rd or January 1st of 2023, all new phases of development would have to go in. So if you had a preliminary plat that had, let's say Crossroads at the Lakes, for example, you've got a preliminary plat has been approved that covers the entire subdivision, and they have constructed plats 1 and 2, but not 3, 4, and 5, or however many they have left. Rather than saying that since the preliminary plat's approved, they are forever guaranteed to go on the old subdivision, on January 23rd, or January 2023, sorry, any new construction drawings and final plat they don't need to preliminary plat, but they would need to meet the new regulations. So then, for example, it may change certain aspects of it. So we would review it, but they would need to be in compliance even with subsequent plats in a previously approved subdivision.
And would that apply to a PUD master plan as well for one that is old?
A PUD master plan would have their regulations would kick in when they actually submit their preliminary plat. Okay. The PUD master plan is really part of the rezoning. So yes, I mean, even if they had a PUD master plan on file, when they come in, then the preliminary plat would need to meet it. So chances are it would be things like, whether it's a traffic study, whether it is turn lanes that they might be responsible for. So those kinds of items, or maybe how we deal with their park, that they're proposing on their parks. I don't think we've got a lot of PUDs floating out there that haven't been constructed. I mean, Lakewoods would be one. Like the Snetzler piece was not a PUD, so that was just a rezoning. So there's nothing.
And we had the Wolf Creek one tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
So
does anyone?
A lot of work went into this, so
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Pretty comprehensive. And it's probably a good thing, because as Polk City grows, we need to have more, I guess, kind of attention to detail.
Well, this just
Are
really
there-
brings it up into compliance with current standards. The subdivision ordinance goes back, I don't even know how long. It was amended 2 different times for just very unique pieces since I've been working for the city. The first was we amended it so that it required 4-year maintenance bonds for pipe and paving. I believe, I can't remember which one of them only required 2-year maintenance bonds. So we had one quick revision, like practically the day I got into Polk City, to make 4-year maintenance bonds. So that was one kind of a quick update. And then another update to put the strong preference that construction was completed before the final platting instead of final platting up front and then just having a subdivision bond, because the city was having so much trouble with getting punch lists completed because the developer already had final plat approval and building permits were being issued and stuff just didn't get wrapped up. So that was another kind of a quick change, but they were Band-Aid fixes, if you will, where this is obviously a lot more wholesale.
Right. That's very good. Any other comments or questions for Kathleen or anything? I think if not, are we ready for a motion?
Just a quick question. Or does anybody else have issues with requiring the private streets moving forward to have sidewalks on both sides with the, obviously, ability for the council to waive that requirement?
I'm fine with it. Good idea, thanks.
Yeah, I think we're okay with that.
Okay. So whoever makes the motion, if they would add that in.
Well, how about you?
Now I'm get my paperwork back out. Gosh, darn it. I will make a motion to approve. What is this called again? Sorry.
Amended subdivision regulations.
Amended subdivision ordinance, right?
There you go. That's fine. Yep.
Yep. With the addition of requiring sidewalks on both sides, both public and private, just making sure that that's in there. And that's it, right? Yeah.
I'll second that motion.
All right, roll call, please.
Hankins,
Yes.
Triplett,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Olfest.
Oh, Doug has not with us anymore.
Oh, we lost him. Vogel
Yes.
and Sires.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we haven't quorum yet, so it's approved. Move on to council. Finally, wrap up things here. Ron, do you have anything for us?
Yes. First of all, thank you for all the hard work that staff and engineering put into this to get us across. It's something we've needed for a long time. I'm glad it started with the P&Z. You guys are so thorough and you do such a good job. And what you have to say carries a lot of weight with the council, I know. And a lot of hard work went into it. It's greatly appreciated. The only thing I didn't see in there that and I don't know if this is a place for it, but I'd like to see some stronger tree language. I mean, we changed our tree ordinance, but it doesn't seem to be working. We still get the same old promises. We're going to save what we can, and they don't. So that's something I'd like to see in there. I'd also like to thank the commission for your comments tonight on Wolf Creek. It's greatly appreciated. I just feel that this subdivision ordinance we're probably 10 years too late, but at least we're getting something in place. And yeah, I think will really help the city as we move forward. And Deanna, I want to apologize about the sidewalks on yours. As soon as they said they were going to save trees, we got all over it. And plus, they were never going to develop on that side of the house or on that side of the street. No house is going to be built. And I think within the next week, I went to work and they were knocking trees down with bulldozers up there. So live and learn, as they say. But thank you for your hard work again. And we had a tough decision last week. I'm sure everybody's aware of, and we'll see where that goes from now after this. So thank you.
Anything from the city?
I have nothing this evening. Thank you, though. We really do appreciate the time commitment you all put into the subdivision ordinance. So we're definitely looking forward to get that through.
Well, thank you. Any comments from our commission, staff, or anything? I think,
Just
Ron,
a-
you have something coming up this Saturday.
Actually, that was last Saturday, had the open house.
Oh, gosh, that was last Saturday.
for
Goodness,
the,
how was that?
For the Polk City Visioning Committee. It's tough to do those kinds of things these days when there's no large city celebrations or events to tie them into. Had what I'd call a reasonable turnout, kind of had a steady flow of onesies, twosies. Essentially, we were looking at the boards that were developed by our talented folks from our landscape architectural firm to kind of give an update as far as meeting the goals that were set when we set out on the visioning process. We have a few more steps yet to go, which will include kind of building a book to help us move forward, present things better to council and things in the future, and also to use to hopefully go out and look for funding from a variety of sources to achieve some of the projects that might be recommended. It's been kind of a pleasure to serve on that commission. There's a lot of interested citizens and a lot of good talent, and it's been a lot of fun.
Anyone have anything else? I did not make it to any of the meetings about this Hy-Vee store. Did any of you attend the sessions or anything? Any comments from that?
I'll just say the visioning commission or committee did indeed do kind of an informal poll. It was between our meetings when this came to a head, and it was really split in the visioning committee, as the council was as well, pretty well. I might add, I as a representative of P&Z did not vote because I didn't think it was appropriate for me to vote how the P&Z felt. So I actually stayed silent in that.
All right. It'll be interesting as it goes forward here, I guess. Anything else from anyone? If not, shall we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I think we had a move. I think we had a motion and a second in there. We had some breaking up. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Here, see you all and be safe.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Good night.